Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you might be in this wonderful, amazing world of ours. And welcome to In the Spotlight with me, your host, Seamus Corry, wellbeing consultant and mental health practitioner. It's great to have you along to listen into this episode and episodes of my podcast series. Can I say at the start, as always, I start with thanking you as listeners, as subscribers, as followers who continue to engage with my show, continue to subscribe to my show and follow my show, and more wonderfully comment on my shows that once you've listened to them. And please continue to do that. Please continue to subscribe. Please continue to follow. Please continue to comment on my shows, because it's through your comments and feedback that I'm able to develop this content and create this content for you based on the comments I've received. So thank you for those. Guys, you don't want to miss today's episode, ladies and gentlemen. You do not want to miss today's episode. I have a one of a kind in front of me today. I think somebody who just blows my mind in terms of what he can do and who he is. Let's just give you a small flavor of who this guy is. He is an illustrator. He's an award winner. He is a magician, speaker, writer, pastor, specialist board gamer, cyclist, indoor climber, and I don't know. And
you missed DJ.
And I miss DJ as well. I miss DJ as well. I don't know, frankly, how he fits it all in. But it's wonderful. It's wonderful to have my guest on the show today, Andy Gray. You're very welcome to In the Spotlight. How are you, my friend?
Thank you. I'm really good. I just get bored easy. That's my problem.
Yeah.
And every hobby I've got turned into business. Although I've just discovered, I think I finally got a hobby I can't turn into a business. I've just got into Gunpla and Gundam.
Wow.
I bought my first kit on Monday, and I'm so excited. I'm just like, whee!
Can I ask what that is?
Imagine giant fighty robots. So it's plastic kits. It's going to sound really stupid, is this? But it's basically it's you make a plastic toy from a kit, and it's all posable and stuff. But it's big manga Japanese stuff. They have competitions in Japan for it. War gamers. So I play like miniature painting and stuff. So I used to pro paint for a while. Of miniatures for Warhammer and that kind of thing. And Henry Savale's into Warhammer, so that's all right. He's Superman. But I've wanted to get a kit for about 2 years, not done it. And then on Monday I had some birthday money. I just turned 55, yay! And I went to the shop, and I was gonna buy some oil paints, because I've never oil painted miniatures before, and I thought, well, I'll buy some oil paints. They didn't have black and white. So I nearly went into an autistic meltdown because I had a hard weekend working in the church over Easter. Nearly had a meltdown, which is very embarrassing. But then thought, well, hang on a minute. I've wanted Gunpla. I know they've got some here. So I went and bought some. So 50 quid bought me an awful lot more plastic than I thought. And I've already spent 4 hours and only built the head unit. Sorry, chest unit. So it's brilliant. Anyway, look up Gunpla or Gundam on YouTube. It's awesome. And I'm excited because it finally means I can stop working and think of something else that isn't artistic.
We'll check it out, and we definitely will. We definitely will. Andy, it's so great. It's so great to have you on today. And I know from discussions we've had, I know you wanted to reach out and speak. I suppose to those who might be listening today who may have similar issues, and for you, look at and talking about and you describing your background, you describe yourself as autistic, ADHD. The autism has been diagnosed, but the ADHD hasn't, right?
Yeah, that's fair to say.
But you were. Am I right in saying you were a late diagnosis?
Yeah, very much so. So
how was your early life, Andy? How was your early life growing up?
Early life growing up.
Not knowing you had this condition.
Oh, right. Okay. So early life. Back when I'm one of those strange individuals who can remember back to when I was 2 years old.
Yeah.
I used to, give you an idea. So really early on, struggled to speak a little bit. and had a bad stutter. And the doctor, he was Egyptian and very wise as well. He told my mum and dad, this is back early 70s, and told my mum, said, he needs to learn to slow down with his speaking because I had a bad stutter, really bad. So learn to speak because his brain is going too fast for his mouth. That's quite wise back in the 70s, if you think.
Oh,
They should learn to slow down speaking. So I still remember thinking, I mean, how I remember this, I've got no idea. But I decided I wasn't going to learn to speak slower. I was going to learn to speak faster so my mouth will catch up with my brain. So I did. But I used to do things like, even before I was 5 years old, I used to enjoy doing things like finding number patterns. So I would do different things with numbers to discover patterns and all that kind of thing. Did averagely well at primary school, I guess. Mum and dad, because the schools around us were pretty rubbish, mum and dad decided they'd take a heavy hit and remortgage the house for me to go to private school. Had to do an exam. They weren't sure whether I could do the exam or not. So I went to talk to the head teacher who broke the law. And back in the late 70s, they were kind of SATs. I don't know what they were called then, but anyway. And he said, I want to show you this so you can see that yes, you might as well do the entrance exam. So kind of grammar school, but you had to pay for it. And showed them the results. And apparently I got the highest they'd ever seen in the school. So I don't know exactly what it was. Educationally, always been kind of average. So I got six O levels, really showing the age now. Six O levels, got art, never fitted in at all. So really sort of like struggled and people like call me slightly quirky or whatever. Did my first proper art commission for somebody else in our youth group when I was 14, so that was all right. But yeah, so never really fitted in, struggled, had two nervous breakdowns, if you like. One of them ended up with me going to full-time youth and children's work. But then learned at that point, because I was doing a college course, I thought, well, I better sort of like learn how to learn because I'm a bit rubbish at remembering stuff. So brilliant flash memory. But then very soon after that, I would forget it. And I never really, no one taught me how to learn stuff. So I trained myself in memory techniques, which I've used to this day. And I train other people in memory techniques and didn't realize it was sort of like that was a skill. Then I was doing, but still, all of my work's been for most of my life was based around sort of like church, so youth and children's work a lot, and there's like training other people and stuff like that. People would always look to me for information, ideas, and all that kind of thing, but and always connected really well with youth and children. Um, so I was able to like think creatively, so I've done huge amounts of work around that.
mm,
But the really thing which I noticed over and over again was the number of times when I would say stuff and people would be offended by it. Because I never spoke at the right time. Probably one person, I don't realize to this day, I don't think, that sort of like they really upset me. But I'd had to interrupt a conversation because somebody turned up. It was actually a church service, but um, and they were looking for help and assistance. And somebody else was doing the youth work. And I went, and they were the youth worker, and I wasn't, I was just minister. And I went and interrupted a conversation they were having because it's important to keep people included. And I couldn't work out how to break into this conversation because I don't do conversations very well. I don't know when it's my turn to speak. And I broke into this conversation, and sometime about later that week, because I had to say, look, you need to meet this person. They need some information. And this person had a right go at me. And it was just like tip of the iceberg of having many, many times this happening of you're always interrupting. You never take your time. You never know when it's you don't think before you speak.
mm.
And it was just like, hang on a minute, what have I done wrong? And I realized that that was a regular feature of what was going on. But I thought it was just because I was wrong and I was broken. And it wasn't until a few years later when I got the diagnosis, I went, oh, hang on a minute. Now I know why I struggle and I don't need to keep struggling. So it's been hard. Rejection, getting it wrong, and being kicked in the teeth, and having management have a go at me many times and get cross with me, and not realize sort of like what's going on. So yeah, so it's been a bit tough at times.
Was getting a diagnosis then a bit of a relief, Andy?
Oh, very much so. So what happened was um, my son was diagnosed first.
Mm,
He'd really struggled through primary school, back into primary school, then went to secondary school, very quickly went into school refusal. Um, Took a lot of fighting to get a diagnosis for him, as it
mm,
does quite often, and
mm,
took some time. And then we looked at how he behaved in his features of his life. Then we recognized the features that were the same in my dad. And
oh,
then we went, doesn't tend to skip generations. Oh, look. And we discovered that I've been masking it for many years.
yeah.
And so often sort of feeling as though I wasn't really being as authentic as I could possibly be.
Mm,
Um, and then I got and then moved, didn't move careers, but became more sort of like a training specialist down in the southwest for churches. And then I put my foot in it really badly one time with management. Bishops, not a good idea. And it wasn't my fault. I'll tell you what that is if you want to know what happened. But the result was that my manager, my direct manager, who was an absolutely wonderful person, she still is a wonderful person, we're still in touch, has a real soft spot for neurodiversity. And she said, "You've always said that you're probably autistic. Can we pay for a diagnosis for you? It might just save your job." It was that serious. So she did, and my psychologist, who's now a friend, just because of how things worked, turned around to me at the time and said, "Oh yes, you're definitely neurodiverse. You're definitely autistic. I will write the certificate out for you." And then once that happened, life changed.
yeah, yeah. And we spoke before the show went live to say that it's a condition that doesn't hold you back, but it somehow enriches your creativity, and you have a wonderful vision and
Hmm.
view of the world that you use creatively to inspire other people through your live illustration work.
Hmm.
Um, how as as somebody who is neurodiverse, how do you
Hmm.
see the world, Andy? Is it a series of colors? It is a series of movements, and I'm particularly interested in finding out more about your live illustration works and how you're able to process a conference or
Okay.
a meeting or or
Hmm.
engagement where you've got a massive people in the hall, but somehow beautifully you're able to create a mosaic of illustration that captures the moment. How, what, how does that?
What's going on in your brain, basically,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah,
Right. Okay.
basically,
So an interesting way of looking at it is, I mean, for years and years and years, I have had the knack, ability, don't know what it is, to be to talk to people in business and even stuff that I don't know about. They give me bits of information, and then I make connections and come up with ideas. So I often say when talking with business people, look, I can help you with this. I can give you some ideas and stuff. Nine of the bits of information I'll give you are rubbish, and then one bit will be gold, and you'll never have thought about things in that way, and
yeah,
then that'll make you work. So what I do is I call it offering my neurodiverse brain to neurotypical things. So that, and I say, I haven't got everything right, and I don't say you have to do it my way or anything, but what I do is I say, look, let me help you by offering what this weird brain does. So it's
mm,
always been making connections and ideas, and I literally can look at one. So I'm looking over here. But for those on podcast, I'm looking out the window because I can't always maintain eye contact. So anyway, so what I do is I kind of like just it's almost like a sense I get is the best way of saying.
yeah,
So if anybody knows sort of like psychology stuff, personality profiles, my favorite is Myers-Briggs because they've shoved me through it multiple times because of what I've done in the past. And I come out as 100% extrovert and 100% intuitive, which basically breaks the system. You're not allowed to get that. I got it, which I think is down to the neurodiverse brain.
mm,
And what that means is I'm pulling in data continually from the world. I'm absorbing it literally, and it's
yeah,
going into my brain somewhere or other. And the intuition is literally I just can make connections without knowing how those connections are made. And they combine with other stuff. So a good way of expressing it is a very typical autistic experience and ADHD as well is being in a cafe and finding it very hard to listen to the conversation in front of you because everything else is the same volume. All
Mm.
right. And the way I discovered that for myself, for how I cope with it, is I lip read. I used to think I was going deaf, and it wasn't. As soon as I lip read, I could hear the conversation in front of me, which is really weird. So that's how it sort of like comes across. That's what it feels like for those of you, the listeners who are wondering what that might feel like. So when I'm illustrating live in a conference, um, what you're seeing going on the board is what's happening in my brain underneath all the while, making all of these connections like I do in business and every single thing I do. And I can't stop the connections happening. If I get a, if I mean, it happened to me the other day and I was talking about connections and the idea was started flowing with connections. And then suddenly my brain was making all of these different things about wow, awe, psychology of awe, hierarchy of needs, Maslow. There's so many things all building into this one thought of what's connection. And it's what my brain does. So what you see on the board happening is my brain making live connections. What is going on is I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, very, very clever girl. I say girl here, she's sort of about 10 years younger than me. Very, very, very clever. And she was saying, because I was saying to her that of the only about 3,000 people in the world who do what I do, and most of them work digitally, and some of us work in big sheets of paper. So to explain to people, I work on 4 meter long 1.2 meter wide sheets of paper on big boards, and I stand on stages. I quite happily stand on stages to do this. It's performance art. And I said that of the 3,000 in the world who do it in whatever way they like, the majority, it looks like, are neurodiverse in some way or other. I said most of them seem to have ADHD. And I said, but I do it differently somehow. She said, yes. She said, what happens is, she says, ADHD means that you're absorbing everything and can process everything and all the rest of it all at the same time. But your difference, she says, is with the autism, you have no filter. So what's happening is data's coming in, it's processing, resonating with everything else going on. I'm also sensing what the room needs, who is there in the room, and it's all processing at an intuitive level. And then it flows out through my pen. If you know anything about autism, even ADHD to some extent, I think, is we have this thing called stimming. So that means we're fiddling, or even while I'm talking now, wafting my hands around and things, my feet under the desk are doing curly things all the while. And so all of this stimming energy is coming out.
Mm.
And all that's happening is I've learned over years to be able to listen to any meeting that I've been in, which usually they're boring, to draw at the same time, and then later discover drawing what people say was stimming. So what's happening is I've taken what is seen as a kooky autistic thing of stimming, because some people rock and some people play with hair and some people twiddle with things and you got fidget toys and all the rest of it. I've simply taken that and the energy literally that I'm trying to burn off because my brain's been overstimulated comes out through a pen and it gets shaped by all of these things going on. So for me, I'm just stood there, just doing the thing I do. And people say, don't you get nervous? Because what do you think? It's like, no, it just kind of like just flows through. And it's creating these images. And because I've been an illustrator I worked out over 30,000 hours,
Wow.
the images just flowing because I've been doing this for 30 years. Illustrating books and things. It just literally an image pops into my head. It creates a metaphor because I think visually as well. And then I just write down that, and then I can sense the most important keywords as well. So you've got to have words and pictures to do what I do. And I'm in sensing the most important keywords to put with the image. I put those things together. I organize it because, like I said early on in my life, I did some study about brains and memory and how things work. So mind mapping has a huge influence on this. Gestalt principles for organization, and I just put everything together and it just happens in my head. I just draw it. Sometimes it's great, and sometimes I go, that's a bit rubbish. And I've just taken on my son as my colorist as well. He's going to be starting full time because he's 19 in September. He's going to be my social media manager. He's autistic as well, and he's also exceptionally colorblind. He's my colorblind colorist. It's quite cool. But you got a father and son team now, which brings
I love
even
it.
more wow to the table. And so I can concentrate when we work together, I can concentrate on just the words and just the images and just the pictures, and I let it flow through. And the funny part is at the end of the day, here's me waffling like mad now. my son Ruben, he turns around and says, "Dad, it's so funny hearing you talk to people." He said, I say, "Why is that?" He said, "Because it's like you're speaking in single words, maybe just like I was when I was a kid, as if you're drawing and illustrating your conversation in real time with people."
Wow. Yeah.
So that's the effect it has on me. My brain sort of like shuts down at the end of the day and goes, there. But it's great. It's great. So it's fun. So that's how it's working. That's what's going on.
You know, and from a mental health point of view, there must be, with that level of stimulation and
Hmm.
intuition going on, there must be times, Andy, where you peak, where you peak really high, and
Hmm.
where you dip really low. Is that the case for you? Do you have moments of peak and trough?
Yeah. So doing after I've done the work, so we'll talk in two terms. One of them is like normal life, and one of them after doing the work. A common feature for all of us is that we burn out doing this work,
Yeah,
and we will sleep for the following day.
yeah,
And so you can handle doing a conference of 3 or 4 days, and then we'll sleep for a week. You just literally burn out with it, which is why if I told you sort of like the hourly rate and the daily rate, you go, wow, that's a lot of money in one day. But the result is you cannot do anything else apart from recover. So you have to allow for those kind of costs in what you do, because otherwise you literally would burn out. In normal life, it wasn't till, well, I think we're getting on to 8 months ago now. I would find every 6 weeks, I would go through a period of about 3 or 4 days when I would get very depressed, very down, and I would spiral. My wife called it spiral. I couldn't think my way out of it, and I just get depressed. Um,
yeah.
and it was really bad. The good side of it is on the upside, my brain's making connections I couldn't have really thought of, and it was sort of like absolutely fantastic. And then uh, I found the solution to it, and the solution was so simple.
And the solution for you was?
Oh, that's the leading question. I wanted to make sure we wanted to go there because I wasn't sure I was waffling too much. Right, we'll go there then. So the solution is something called creatine.
Hmm.
And I stumbled across it through because I'm a cyclist. Um, I was watching Global Cycling Network, which is a YouTube channel, and I was watching it, and they were talking about supplements that Tour de France cyclists take, and
Yeah,
one of them is creatine. And creatine I've known about for like years and years and years from bodybuilding. So I used to do a lot of bodybuilding for health reasons, and before I took on cycling. And what it does for bodybuilders is basically it kind of like sucks water into the muscle, so it makes you look bigger. And I'd never taken it because it's like, well, I'm not bothered about looking bigger or whatever. I just do the training for mental health. And but it said that in more recent research that cyclists were taking it so they had the explosive power, but then could recharge faster.
yeah.
But they also took it for mental reasons because over a 5 hour cycle race, you need to concentrate. Creatine is brilliant for concentration, so it appears. Okay, well, I need to concentrate for hours doing live illustration. I will start taking it. So I'd already started taking Ginkgo biloba from Holland and Barrett, so anybody can get hold of it. And that improves the way your brain makes connections. So if you're an ADHD person or autistic, sometimes you have the experience of it's something's on the tip of your tongue and you can't quite remember what that thing was. Ginkgo biloba solves it. All right, it's really good for that. It's Chinese medicine for Alzheimer's and things like that. It improves memory, but it's the only one that's actually got any proper evidence of it. So some people say lion's mane or whatever. Ginkgo biloba probably does it. But it said that it doesn't work for normies, as we like to call them sometimes, but it does work really well for people who've got brains that are a bit quirky.
Yeah.
And I took it, gave it to my son as well. He loves it. Brilliant effect means you can make mental connections and somehow you can access all the data you know's there. So that was the first stage. So then I was looking for what else could improve my memory. Came across this thing called creatine on GCN for concentration. I thought, I'll start taking it. Great. So I did, and you don't preload. Some people say preload. You don't have to. It just takes about 3 or 4 weeks for it to really get going. And then because of how YouTube algorithms work, it started feeding me other information on this creatine stuff. About 15 quid from Amazon. Okay, I get, I think it's called Applied Nutrition or something or other. But anyway, the psychology, the stuff it started feeding me was research from psychologists.
Mm,
And apparently, Big Pharma doesn't like it because it's cheap.
mm,
But psychologists were finding that give people 5 to 10 milligram dose of creatine every day, which is the normal dose, and they stop getting depression. It solved depression. And I thought, hang on a minute, I've been taking this for 4 weeks. I've just noticed I'm experiencing no downsides.
mm.
And I've been on this for 8 months now. So remember what I said, every 6 weeks I would have a depressive episode of about 2 or 3 days where I'd
Yeah.
spiral, I'd just crash, I couldn't work. It was really bad.
Yeah.
My experience is, it might not work for everyone, I don't know. But my experience is that although, yes, I do have the occasional downs. So after working really hard this Easter, nearly had a meltdown trying to find this oil, these oil paints on Monday. But I was able to stop myself.
Mm,
And things have sometimes been in the last few months, because of the world, financially tight. But instead of going, oh no, my world has ended, I've gone, oh well, what can I do? And I've been able to make the decision not to spiral out of control. And although sort of like I might have had, tears, because it still happens,
mm.
it's only been literally maybe 1 or 2 hours. And then I've been able to decide to go and do something else. And so you take wisely, I would say. It's not illegal, it's not dodgy, it's not like taking mushrooms. It's the most researched thing on the planet, probably, apart from maybe penicillin. Um, but it does something, and something to do with APT in your brain and the way it makes connections and all the rest of it. But not only has it helped with my live illustration work, but it's also solved one of the biggest things that was crippling me in my life, which was this regular depression. And I feared, would it mean that the top would decrease?
Mm.
Would it mean that my ability to think fast, and would it mean that sort of like the real highs that I get, that means suddenly I'm generating massive images and ideas and brand new concepts, would I lose that ability? And the answer is no, I've not lost it at all. So I'm still aware that my brain is wanting to go into the low depression side, but I don't go there. It doesn't mean it takes over my life, but the top level thinking still happens, and that's just brilliant. So you get the best of both worlds. It's like that AC/DC and smoothing circuits and all the rest of it that sort of like happens in adapters and stuff like that. It's kind of like I was doing the full AC/DC of current flow going up and down. I'm waving my hand now for everybody who can't see this. You got the AC/DC of the sine wave wants to be turned into DC current, and it seems like that's what's happening. It's like the low bit has been chopped off, and I've
Yeah.
only got the positive current that then builds up, and it just becomes this continual charge to be able to do things. So
So it just goes along, and for those that can't see, I'm just gonna gently glide my hand across the screen. So it just goes in that kind of motion. You have a maybe high, but
yeah,
you don't get too low to fall into a
yeah, yeah, yeah,
depressive health.
correct. Like I said, Big Pharma doesn't like it because that means they can't sell antidepressants quite the
Yeah.
same. So they keep trying to say, "Oh no, it doesn't work," and all the rest of it. And yet there are psychologists are prescribing this stuff. In fact, that's one thing that got fed to me the other day through YouTube was, and I'm quite interested in this because my wife, don't tell anybody, but she's going through this weird thing called menopause. Yes, we have to pay attention to this as blokes because otherwise we might run into problems. But no, it can be quite debilitating. But because like I've been doing a little bit of research, so I could help my wife get through everything that she's got to get through. It then combined two things together, and it fed to me that creatine can help women through menopause as well, through all the sort of like downsides of that. So there's something about this, and there's more and more research going into it, which is saying that it's not just, and it's even helping things like, I don't know why it's doing. So I've got a heart issue I've had since 2 years old, called AV nodal reentrant tachycardia. Um, and it's even helped with that as well. And I don't know why it's helped.
Mm.
It's like it'll do a sudden stutter. So my heart rate can go up to about 250 beats a minute. And it'll do a stutter saying, I'm about to flick out here. And then it goes back to normal again. And it's like, And it's been ever since I've been taking this stuff. And it's like,
Um,
what is going on here? Why is it that this creating is solving so many problems in my little world? So there you go.
Do we do we then, Andy, need to consider the role that alternative medicine and holistic medicine has on autism and ADHD, and
Yeah.
does more reading, does more research, does more science work need to be carried out to ensure that, it's probably the easiest thing in the world, right? If you're depressed, you'll go to the doctor and you'll get a pill for that, and maybe
Mm,
that's not the answer for some people, and for you the creatine has really worked and successfully worked, but it's only
mm,
because you've done the reading, you've done the knowledge, you've done the
mm.
research, you've done the understanding. You really gone into in depth in terms of the subject.
Yeah, yeah, I did the autistic deep dive thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely understand that,
Yeah.
but for you, you have a real good,
Mm,
solid understanding of
mm,
how creatine helps and supports
mm,
you maintain your metabolism as
mm,
as a neurodivergent, and is that lacking? Is that lacking in terms of NHS? Is that lacking in terms of you know uh, you know uh, generic general medicine at the moment?
mm. I don't know, to be honest. I mean, we can't miss the elephant in the room of what certain policymakers over in other parts of the world are doing with this whole thing about, well, basically branding autism as a disease
Yeah,
that can be solved. I mean, so many of us, you probably as well, are furious about that because, there are
completely.
people, a friend of mine who's autistic was working with some of the folks in the creative industry over there, just went over for about 4 weeks. And I said to him, I said, what's it like over there? He said, there are people who are literally crying because they don't know what the world's going to hold for them over there now.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
it's on the disease register. I mean, if we call disease as in being diseased, yes, but to call it disease implies it can be A caught and B it can be solved with a pill, and it can't be. So what I'm saying is, what's happening to me is it's not a solution to my brain. My brain is still, and yours as well, I think, is still more tightly wound than a normie brain.
Yeah.
Um, it's it's just a fact of life, and it's inherited. There might be contributor factors, but I think that sort of like, if we look for the fact of what ADHD does on its own, is it enables you to be able to have peripheral vision and notice that things are there, right? And pattern recognition and stuff. If you think in hunter-gatherer brain, what's the most useful thing in gathering, but being able to have the and this comes out in sort of like foraging. People saying foraging, they can see a toadstool that sort of like is about a good 100 foot away, and they have a sense, and you can turn to it and say, "Over there's the thing." And so it's kind of like ADHD and autism have been there for the whole of humanity.
Mm.
It's just in the modern world we're in, it doesn't always fit. I
Yeah.
was even thinking yesterday about a concept of potential. So it's just ideas I get. Is it the fact that the structures that we originally had in our tribal systems of you've got the medicine man, you've got the hunter gatherers, you've got the hunters. Young people, for example, stay awake at night and they just sleep through the day. Why? Because they've got better eyes and therefore they can protect you. If there are wild beasties or there are other things coming attacking you, everyone else sleeps during the day. Why is it women go through this weird thing called menopause? Well, it must have some sort of evolutionary function. And I was talking to a friend, this friend the other day, and she said, well, yes, it has. There's been some research into it. And we think it's because you need to still have the compassion, but you're the knowledge holders within the tribe. So you can teach the young mums, and the mums can go to sleep. Why is it that so many people who are going through menopause can't sleep at night? Why do they go back to this whole thing of not sleeping at night? Well, it's actually so the mums can get a proper night's sleep so they can care for the kids so that and but the world doesn't work like that anymore. So the thing is that we have always been there. Autism's always been there. ADHD has already been there. So we can't solve it with a pill, but in this day and age, we might need something which helps us to cope with the world that we're living in. And if we can find certain things, creatine apparently comes from meat eating. And so it might be, I mean, I don't have huge amounts of meat, can't afford it for a start. And so if that's the case, then is it the fact that we're supposed to be having more meat? And a lot of people who go on to what's it called, carnivore diet, and they go on to like just eating mainly meats and fat. A lot of people who've gone to that kind of diet and drop an awful lot of the carbs, when they do that and they've got mental health issues. There's a big climber, brilliant climber guy, and he said that that he's tested it, and as soon as he went on to meeting a pure carnivore diet, his depression went away.
Mm.
So is it a creatine lack that means that we can't cope so well with our world? I
Okay.
have no idea. Is it that we're supposed to be eating more creatine? And my mum and dad have been going through, because both my parents were adopted. They've been going through doing the whole family tree thing. And my mum had a blood test, and the blood test came back and said, "Oh, you've got plenty of creatine. You're fine." But it's kind of like you look and you think, "Well, actually, have you got plenty of creatine, or do we need more creatine in our diet?" So it's fascinating to me, like you say, it's not alternative medicine, isn't creatine. Ginkgo biloba is,
Mm.
um, but there are things out there that we've kind of dismissed. But I mean, we have penicillin. What? And we thought, well, penicillin is an amazing thing. It's absolutely wonderful. What is it? It's mold. You know. um, yeah, and much of our medicine, the monks in this country started with the medicine. How did they decide what was good for what ill? Well, it
Mm.
depended on the shape of the leaf and the shape of the plant as to what they would apply it for. And it's kind of like, how alternative can so you give something to someone, you say, well, it's the right shape, isn't it? So it might be good. And then, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And then that starts off medicines, they asking the question, why does something work? So, yeah.
It's
That's a
amazing.
long answer.
It's fascinating, and Andy, I could speak to you all day. I really could, and I'd probably hold you up from your amazing work that you do. And I know, and we haven't even touched upon the live illustration stuff, albeit just to find out how your brain processes that stuff. But in terms of your live illustration work, you bring meetings to life, right? Essentially, you bring
Mhm.
conferences to life, you bring sessions to life. So you visually allow people to see what's being said at the meeting. Would that be
Yeah.
an accurate description of the work that you do?
Yeah, that's a real good description. So it's more than minutes, it's more than notes. It
Yeah.
is, I mean, the work which I've been doing on thinking how it works, I'm fascinated by how it works. There's kind of like there's the key to it seems to be something happens with connection. So it
Mm.
means that it's brilliant. So somebody used a phrase for me a couple of years back, which is I bring human to the data. So
Okay.
as people are saying something, so it also breaks time a little bit, but there's something about connection. So I won't go there because I've not fully thought it through yet. But the three elements are, which has come up for me by a fantastic bloke who is a business branding kind of person, and he said the three areas he said that'll help you express it are participation, retention, acceleration. So participation, people feel more engaged
Mm.
um, when they can see the live illustration happening at the same time.
Mm.
So they feel included. People get listening fatigue, often comes out as an experience of boredom, but boredom's something else going on in the brain before it prepares to be creative. But listening fatigue feels the same thing. So people are trying to process language, apply it to themselves, create the ideas and the images and the other senses that are necessary to do that, understand the story. They're trying to do something called Bloom's taxonomy, which is application, relevance, discernment, and then how can they apply it to their own lives. They're doing all of that at the same time, and their brain shuts down, which is why you have the experience of boredom. So the participation element means that actually you can look at what I'm doing in real time and seeing the pictures created in real time, and it hooks people in, and then they can see where they're at, re-navigate, and then reconnect. So I'm doing most of the heavy lifting for them, so that they can really listen to what's going on, and they know they can come back to it. So that's the first thing. That's participation. From a neurodivergent point of view, most of us are visual thinkers, even if we don't create images in our head.
Mm.
That's something more complex that we haven't really got time for. But it helps them to process and sort of like see how things are laid out if it's done in a visual way and how things relate to one another. Then we have so after that you got retention. So because I'm a memory specialist, for want of a better word, I understand about neuroscience of how what kind of things to capture to mean that it's going to create something called an Ebbinghaus nudge, which will remind you later on about what you spoke about. So you can take photographs of it all, and then when you're trying to share the information of keynote speakers to other people, they have a prompt and go, oh, it was something about this. Hang on a minute, boom, bring up the thing on the phone and say, oh, it was this, and then they can talk about it confidently, but what it meant to them rather than trying to repeat everything that the keynote speaker said. And that has more power, but because it gets referenced to the keynote speaker builds reputation. And then the final one is acceleration. So acceleration in taking action. And the thing that all conferences want, all keynote speakers want, and even what the delegates want, is they all want to know that they go away and take action. Because when you take action, it means that it's had the proper impact. And there's something about the way that this work connects with other people, and the impact of art in itself on transforming and changing people. There's something about that which means you take action. And when you take action, it means that it's brought about much more value to the conference. So it means you're more likely to reconnect with the keynote speaker. You're more likely to do the conference next year. And therefore, you're getting money for the conference. So it really benefits them. It helps the keynote speaker become more famous because that's really what keynote speakers want, because that's how they get their money. And it also means the delegates puts it into action so their world benefits and they grow as well. So this whole live illustration thing has such impact, it's ridiculous. But so few people know about it.
Yeah.
And every time, even with conference organizers, they look and go, we've never seen this before. And I'm like going, well, that's because Google gets it, BBC gets it, the United Nations gets it. And my kind of ambition is to bring this live illustration work to the masses, and show people to like how it's done.
Fantastic, Andy. Fantastic. No, Andy, the final question to you today, mate, before we go, is where can people find you? Where's the best place to reach out and get you, Andy? If people are
Mm.
interested in finding out more or just even connecting with you, you know, that individuals who may be having difficulties themselves and not quite understanding what's happening in their own brains, you know,
Okay. Yeah.
where can people reach out to you, Andy?
Right. Well, I'm more than happy for people to talk to me about for free. I don't charge for this one. If there's what I want to explore neurodiversity or what's happening in their brains or hints and tips I picked up a long time, just reach out to me and talk to me. So you can do that on LinkedIn, and it's one grey dot, spelt with an A. So I'll spell it out: ONEGRAYDOT. Okay, because it's Andy Gray, some Scottish name. So and then the other one is to go to my website, which shows you all the work that I do and how that works, and that's drawnoutmeetings.com. So as in drawing, so drawnoutmeetings.com. All one word, drawn out meetings. And if you just sort of like go there, then you can see what I do. And One Grey Dot is another place. And One Grey Dot I post almost daily. So you can see sort of like what my world is like and all the different things. And more recently, you can even see me wearing my full vicar gear for, so I'm not a vicar, I just kind of like, I'm a minister in Church of England. But you can see my full gear on Easter Sunday. So you can have a giggle at me in a dress. So yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. Andy Gray, thank you ever so much for taking your precious time out to speak to me today and speak to us on here
No,
in
thank
Spotlight.
you. Absolute pleasure.
Andy, I wish you absolutely well with your work that you continue to inspire, accelerate, and grow people's knowledge, understanding, and vision of the world. And I wish you success with bringing live illustration to the masses, which
Thank
is
you.
your mission goal for 25, 26, and beyond.
Mm,
Andy, thank you ever so much, and have a wonderful day.
thank you.